Our layout tour for this evening features Paul Cesak's Pagosa Creek Timber Company. Paul started his career as a design engineer and worked as a model builder, building scale models of refineries. When computer-aided design became popular, Paul morphed into selling the workstations that ran CAD. Not having a model to build, he embraced model trains as a hobby and used computer controls to run his creations in HO scale. During a business trip to Albuquerque, Paul skipped out early one day and drove up to Chama. Shortly afterwards, when visiting the Caboose in Walcott, Connecticut, Paul saw his first On3 engine and traded 11 brass HO engines for 2 Denver and Rio Grande and 1 CNS On3 engines. Paul finished his career as a 3D printing salesman and has used his love of model trains throughout his career. Oil down a pipeline or electricity down a wire is no different than trains down a track. It's all about how you control them. So Paul, if you'll share your screen, and the program is yours.
All right. Do we have it here?
Looks good.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get started. Thank you so much, everybody, for letting me share my layout with y'all here today. As Mark had said, I did indeed start my career as a design engineer building refineries. And we'll talk a little bit about my background and how I got into model railroading. And we'll talk a little bit about the Pagosa Creek Timber Company. And I'll just tell you here how that got started. We have some property in Pagosa Springs, we did. And that's really where I got hooked. And, you know, to go to Pagosa Springs, you have to go through Chama. Yeah, what a place. And so Paul Cesak, PC, that's where the PC comes from. And the TC for Timber Company, my wife's name is Terrell. And so with Terrell, like Carol with the T. So that's where the TC comes from. So that's where you get the PC, Pagosa Creek, and TC for Terrell. And so that's where the name comes from. Little bit about current development. We'll finish up with a little bit about electronics and a little bit about upcoming projects. So here, let's talk a little bit about the background. Back when we used to have to draw CAD, you know, there was no CAD. We had to draw everything with pencil and paper, and refineries is what I did. That model there that you see on the upper right-hand side, that was a refinery we did. I can't say the name of the company. It was in Matagorda Bay down on the Gulf Coast. That was one of 26 tables to build that refinery, so that you can see how complicated it is. We modeled everything down to 2-inch pipe. It was just less than $1 million to build that model. Took 6 guys 2 years, but they felt that we had saved over 40 million in building that plant because we found errors on the model as opposed to finding them out in the plant. Everything was scratch built. It was just an amazing project. And of course, at the bottom, that's purely architectural model. And I enjoyed doing those too. So here's a couple of my early trains that I had done. This on the left-hand side was an HO. That was one of my very first scratch built trestles. That was pretty amazing. That took me a while. That came out of a RMC Craftsman, I think. The one in the middle was my second. That was probably my second layout. That's my son that's now 42 years old. That was on article on the front page of the Herald Coaster, Richmond Rosenberg newspaper. That was their first colored picture in that newspaper. And on the right, after I had gone to work for digital equipment companies selling those workstations, and they had asked me to, I had gotten into the Bruce Chubb CMRI thing, and they had asked me to build a little layout that the whole bottom of the board came down in it. And that actually went to the first worldwide utility forum that was on the Queen Mary in Boston. And it all got packaged up and sent up there, but that's where that original statement had come from. And that people that, and it was all with process control and SCADA equipment and being able to train people, because a lot of salesmen just can't, they just can't visualize electricity going down a wire, but they can visualize a train going down a track, and that got their attention. And so here's just a little bit about what we have in the train. I mean, it's there's 2 rooms. One room was all the logging and mining. That's all, you know, small radius stuff, small weight track. And then it's somewhere along the line, I said, you know, I really do love the big DNR GW stuff. The Kodama K27 is probably my favorite engine, and I have one of those. And the C25 is my second favorite, and I have one of those. And then I had wanted to build the old Malcolm Furlow had done a big mine that I wanted to try to simulate, and I had nowhere to build that. So I said, okay, we got to have another room. So we'll talk about that all later in a little bit. So when I started building my room, this is a picture that Jim Barron had done for me. Jim was over here, and I had torn down one layout, was getting ready to start another one, start this whole logging thing went in On3. And Jim was here, and he just picked up a piece of paper, and we just sat down and started drawing this out. That was Jim Barron from Trains of Texas. Jim passed away 3 or 4 years ago. I don't remember exactly when. And so you see on the left-hand side is where all the logging is, and a big trestle that goes across the center. I had the trestle from a previous layout, only it was all one big curve. So I had to cut it and make it into the other part, coming across to the right-hand side. And so here's a little bit of how on the left-hand side is where the logging is. You can see the switchbacks coming down, going down to the very front of the, is where the sawmill is. And you'll see those parts in there in a minute. Coming back across that trestle and coming back into the yard, and then going up the other switchback on the right-hand side, goes back up into the mines. And this kind of gives you a little bit of an overview of all that area. We'll go into separate details here in a minute. But down in the bottom, you can see the CMRI. And I want to talk about a good friend of mine, Ed Crone, has helped me with this. Just his work has been invaluable in all the things that Ed and I met. Barry Bogues and introduced me to Ed many years ago when we were both first starting on this. And Ed and I worked on it together, and then somewhere Ed just went crazy on it and just started just really making a lot of different changes, and we've had a lot of fun building these things together. So I call this Beaton's curve, and this because if we went back and looked at the track plan, I had done a whole lot. I don't know how much I had looked at Tom Beaton's original layout that was in July of 1989 is when that was in the Gazette. And I knew I was going to be in a small room, and his layout was in a small room. And this was one little piece where he came across an edge, and I just loved that little part. And so this is his curve on the left and the right, same picture, just different angle. And that leads into here on the left hand. So this is kind of a center point of the layout. So if as you're going down that line, if you went up to the left, you would be going up into the timber area. If you went straight through, you would go into the big long trestle that goes over into the mining. And if you went to the right, you would be going down into the sawmill area. And we'll see all those here in a short. The logging guys, they live in the sheds, on the shacks on the left, and they eat on the shack on the right. And of course, the place where they eat right there on the right, that is a building that I had seen something on the red stag picture Red Stag Lumber Company, and I loved it a lot. And so that's just where that picture came, that building came from. I mean, I don't remember how I saw it or what made, I just said, I think there was a trestle that came right out from that. And I saw that and I said, I got to build one of those. And so that's what I did. And the left on the, I now use Builders and Scales corrugated roofing, but back when I built those structures on the left, Builders and Scale didn't make corrugated roofing in O scale. And so I made that on my own with, yeah, it's really weird. If you think it was made with pinion gears. If you think about a pinion gear, if you bought the stock, it comes in stocks about 12 inches long. And then if you cut it like Pillsbury cookies, that's how you make pinion gears. But I had it so that it was like 6 inch, maybe 5 inches long. I wished I would have brought my jig with me, but I made a little jig so that it's like your grandma's washing machine. So you turn the handle and it rolls together, and that's how your clothes went through and got cleaned. And if you put a piece of metal in there, it would come out as corrugated. I mean, it was freaky, but it worked well. So this is looking up into the logging area, and it was my backdrop is very. I tried to make my backdrop as minimal as I can so that I can force as much interest into the layout, and with the backdrop just being minimal. And everything is hand laid. All track is hand laid. All switches are fast track. In this area, they're all number 5s. Most of these trees are from Canyon Creek. I repainted most of them, and Jim Barron helped me repaint a bunch of them. And then I finally learned how to build them myself. The guys there taught me how to build them and sent me instructions on how to build them and sent me all the parts, and I just started building them myself. And that's fun, building these trees. It's different. It's different than anything you ever tried. And so here again, so these are the Trains of Texas coke ovens. Jim actually painted these for me on the spot. I mean, Jim helped me do a lot of stuff on this layout. I can't say that I valued his help tremendously. And the picture in the back, that's showing the back behind that water tank which is another Trains of Texas figure that was long gone. Trains of Texas was long gone. I wanted that water tank. And so my wife went to Jim and said, "Hey, Jim, can you get Paul one of these for Christmas?" And so he made one and gave it to Terrell, and she gave it to me for Christmas. So that was cool. But the line behind that is what goes up to the logging area. That, and the line in front is what goes down to the sawmill. And this just shows that a little bit better. And one thing that Mark had asked me earlier to talk about, I think it was Mark, and might have been Peter, I don't remember, and I forgot to put it in here, but I have 4 PSC Shays. I have 2 Trains of Texas Climaxes. I have a Porter, a PSC Porter, and what else do I have? I guess that's it. And I have, of course, I have the Kodama and the C25. The structure in the back there is scratch built. I don't know why I built that. It just did. This here is Dick Patterson, was a good friend of mine in Vermont. One thing I'd just like to say here is that going to work for Digital Equipment and being a tech salesman gave me travels all over the country. God, I got to go see so many people. It was all over the country. Digital had they were the largest manufacturer in Massachusetts, and they had a model train club that was 285 people. And so anytime I had to go to Massachusetts, very rarely did I have to eat dinner alone or spend time alone in my hotel room. I always had someone's house to go over or someone to go eat with, or, model trains in the Northeast is just amazing. Got to go see George Celios a bunch. Got to go see a whole lot of people. So here's my sawmill. It's the whole exterior structure. I got it out of I think it was an RMC at Model Railroader in 1963. I think it was a Model Railroader in 1963 that I took the plans from and scratch built the whole thing. I've done a little bit of the interior. I have all the Sierra West interior equipment to build it. I just have not done that yet. I have started with the boiler in the back, the Sierra West boiler. And that's all I'll say about it. I let on the roofs, I left them open. And I found these guys, I think I'm not sure what kind of guys those are, but they're hammering, they're guys that are hammering. And so it looks like that they're putting the roof on, and I left it open like that so that when I do put the interior on, it seems kind of crazy to do all that work to put all the interior in it and then no one can see it. And so that's why I left the roof open like that. Well, you can see those guys up there hammering on there. And then the track to the right and the track to the left, I'll show where those go. So here's the track to the right. That just goes and makes a turn and hits a wall. It goes nowhere, just a place to, well, when I buy a new brass engine, that's where I can hide it, until I've had it for 2 or 3 years. And then if the wife says, oh, I never seen that. Well, I've had it a couple of years. Well, you know how that goes. And this to the left, that was a neat little area. I have two of those engines, and I have 4 of those logging cars, and you can see one of them that's empty, that's not on the track there. And there's a switch back, so that just goes to the back of the wall, and there's a switch back there that'll keep one engine and the 2 cars. And so what I plan on doing someday is to have have a set with empties back there, and then have the loaded, and they can go backwards and it can go in empty and then come back out full. And of course the computer can control all that, and that's further down the line. And so here's where the northern New Mexico comes. If you look at the rock, you can see all the red in it, right? If you're driving up out of Santa Fe and you're heading up to Pagosa Springs, and you're just before you get to Chama, probably about 35, 40 miles south of Chama, is where you just go through some of the most amazing passes. And it looks like God just took an airbrush and was painting the mountains with his airbrush, just taking reds and just making a red pass through the mountains. It's just absolutely amazing. And that's what we did on my mountains, Jim and I. Here's that big long trestle that goes across. And this picture was taken by Bob Weary, really good photographer here in Houston. This was the Leverite mine that was made by Colorado Scale Models. It was, gosh, I'm not sure how far back. This was probably I probably built this at least 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. And, Builders and Scale, or somebody built what was the Rattlesnake mine, and they had the tipple that came off of that mine like that. But I had originally seen this Leverite mine at Ken Ayler's house, and he had the tipple that came out from his. This was long before it had ever been done anywhere else, before the Rattlesnake. And I just absolutely loved it. And there was, the O-scale Leverite was long. It wasn't you couldn't find it anywhere. And just lo and behold, one came up on eBay and I got it. And I think I got it for actually less than what the price was it was on it. Somebody didn't know what they had. And so I built it, and then I scratch built that tipple just because I was copying what Ken had done. And that was kind of fun. So all that's just, it's just craziness. The little bitty structure, mine structure, the head frame in the back was just there just to try to, it's little bitty. It's just trying to show some distance. And this is the end of that trestle that goes back into the yard. We'll see that here. That's just another view of the mine. So here we are looking into the yard. I guess I call it a yard. It's on the left. The buildings up on the left are I'm not sure what. I know the one on the left is scratch built. I'm not sure what the one on the right is. You can see the sawmill dead center in the middle, and the big trestle that goes across. This is a York kit at the very front here. There was there is the engine house that's supposed to be right here on the lower right is not here. I'm not sure why it's not here. I must have taken it out for some reason or another, but I think it's in another picture. But well, I'll show this a little bit more detail from other angles. And so here's my Shanghai Reds mine. This is at the very top of the switchback on the right-hand side. And Peter, you had asked about, I think it was Peter that had asked me if that was a washout, and I didn't know where he was talking about. And I went back and looked at it just yesterday, and indeed that is a washout, and I'm not sure how that happened. I don't have a clue. It's not like I did anything to it to make that happen, but it is. But there was an old restaurant here in Houston that had bought a bunch of old barns and made this old mine looking place. It was a great steak restaurant, and they call it Shanghai Reds, and I thought that'd just be a great name to make a mine, so I made this mine. This goes in just a little bit, probably about 4 or 5 inches, and I have a piece of glass in there, a mirror in there that makes it look like it, it's at an angle, and it's lit, and it makes it look like it just goes all forever. It's a neat little structure, all scratch built. This is the building on the right is scratch built. The building on the left is, and the one on the right is my sharpener, my saw sharpener shed. The one on the left is a Sierra West kit. That was the first Sierra West kit I ever put together, and oh my gosh, I just fell in love with Sierra West at that point. They are absolutely amazing kits. I can't, well, it's just, and it's not so much the kits, it's the instructions that go along with them. If you follow the instructions perfectly, you can't miss on building those kits. It's just, well, I won't say any more about that, but it's they're just a lot of fun to do. And the platform there is all scratch built though. This was a Thomas York kit, and I got to meet Thomas York in one of my trips to Orlando when he was down there. I think he was still working for Disney when I met him. We went out to lunch, went out to dinner one night, and he's a different kind of guy, but I really did like him. We had a good time and enjoyed each other's company. And I've always enjoyed building his kits and working with plaster, and you can really make wood look good in plaster, and and stone too. I mean, I love working with this kits. They're beautiful. Okay, so this is this there. So there's the engine house in position. And this was actually, so I had got to meet Dan Downing. I think Dan lived in, did Dan live in Los Angeles or maybe San Diego? I don't remember. I got to visit him at his house. And that engine house was, he had done an article in Timber Times about an engine house, and he had sent, I didn't have, you know, it was long before Timber Times, or before I had started getting that article, that model, that magazine. And so he made copies of it and sent it to me, and then I scratch built that from those deals. On the On3 group, or one of the groups that we get, someone recently, people are talked about the trains of Texas Shorty combines, and that's what that is. That is one of the trains of Texas Shorty combines. What I did different, since mine is a point-to-point layout, it's, what's kind of strange about that is that, you know, you're only going to see one side of every building, right, or every car, right, because they just go from one end to the other. And so I built that. On one side of it is all weathered like this is. If you turn it around, the other side of it is all nice and like it just came out of the car shop. So depends on how I want it to be, is which way you're going to look at it. So that's kind of cool. The little yellow structure right there at the front with part of the roof missing, when I first decided I wanted to go into O scale, that was the very first structure I built. So that's probably, I've been in this house for 30 years. So that structure is probably 30 years old, maybe a little bit older than that. If you look in the outhouse, a little barrel right in front of it that has a hole in the top of it, we'll talk about that later. And over to the left is another mine that I just saw that in some picture, and so I had to break a hole in the mountain to add another mine. Oh, one last thing here. If you see the smoke that's above the engine house, see the smoke up there, and there's nothing generating that smoke. That's just kind of like it's coming out of a stack that's not there. There was a industry there with a stack, and that's where it was, smoke was coming out. And Jim did all that with an airbrush. And that's where I go into the second room. That's where I broke a hole through the wall to go in the second room. And so you go through the engine house and go through out the back of the engine house and through that wall. And we'll see that here in just a second. So back behind the engine house is where my turntable is. That was done out of a Gazette. I don't remember when it was, but they did a deal on the Laws turntable, and that's what that is. And it's completely driven by a New York Railway supply mechanism that's also interfaced back to the computer. And so you have to have Pagosa Creek, right? And this is what it is. And I didn't have, I had, when we laid out the new layout, I had these buildings, golly, the York, whatever that kid is right there in the middle. I don't remember what it was. I had built that, and I love that. It's one of my favorite, the hotel. And I didn't have anywhere to put it, nor the warehouse on the left. And I was going to think about selling them. And Jim said, man, you can't sell those. And he just reached down on the ground and just picked up a piece of styrofoam and picked it up and just started scratch built, you know, just started drawing out. He said, man, he said, because there's a wall there, right? And here's what that wall looks like. And he said, man, if you just build a shelf here, you can just kind of think that the whole railroad just kind of comes and circles in, and this is where it comes in. And so this would be the dead end of the railroad, end of the town. And so he just draws it out real quick with this little road coming through and then hiding back between that one mountain, and just put those buildings there. And he said, so he said, put the shelf up, and we'll come back next week and we'll start working on that. And so he built the shelf and put it up, and of course he did the sky at the top and did the airbrush on the trees in the background, and I really miss Jim. He is a good friend, good friend. So here's what I did to get to the other room. And so the other room was my office. I was on the road most of the time, but I had a home office, and I don't think I ever worked in the same town where my company was located. And so I always worked from the home office. These two rooms both had closets. And so I just gutted the closets. You know, you can see the curtain rod that went across, right, that you would hang your clothes on. And so I just gutted the closets, took the curtain rod out, and put a door in. And so I can actually close the door. If we ever sell the house, I can close the door, put the curtain rod back up, and take all my train stuff out, and people have closets with shelving in them. So it's not like I destroyed the house, but you can now see where the hole is, where there used to be an industry there. It goes through that wall, goes into through the next wall, and then back into the next wall into the other room, and you can see a trestle back there that lives. Of course, that's my desk right there. There was a little bit of an incline there. The incline is to, you know, I had to get above my terminal, right? So I had to make it enough of an incline so I could get above my terminal. This kind of shows you where that was going into the other room. And this is just first step one, right? Was where I was going to put the mine. That's right there in the very front. There were a lot of iterations of this mine before it finally became where it was going to be. That was the final resting place of it. That won second place in structures at the convention this year in Denver. This going past that and going across the room, this is about so this is probably about 1.5 feet off the floor and goes all the way up to, and that highest point is about 1 foot short of the ceiling. And this is what that looks like today. That trestle follows DNRGW prototype on the bents, but it's no special trestle. That's just, you know, the bents themselves are prototypical. And that's more of a picture of the whole thing. I haven't done anything with the scenery below the mountain line. So all the stuff where the trains are down there, that's just goop just put in there just to fill it up. But you know, there'll be lots of trees and lots of dirt and lots of sand and lots of everything else going in there. And so as you go back across further, now you can come see where this is where I'm working. All my track is in. It's all done, but these are, and this over there on the left is that's an old water tank by, I don't remember who made it, but that's about 50,000 gallon water tank. That was just, you know, I had first seen one of those one time when I had to go out to California. I got to go to Dave Adams's house, and I got to say, you know, when I was at Dave's, one of the best things that I saw there was on Dave's layout. He had the actual, when an engine came and stopped in front of that water tank, and the nozzle came down and lowered down and filled the water. That was just amazing. I love that. And so I had to have that tank. And so I still haven't completed it. And that was probably 25 years ago, but there it sits. Those are, all three of those are Sierra West kits that I put together. I'm not sure how I'm going to fit them in or what they're going to do, but they are amazing. They are just so fun to build. On the left, right in front of that water tank, is a little structure. I mean, it's a little car that I've started working on. I haven't finished yet. It's the whole interior structure is 3D printed. I worked for commercial 3D printing companies, Stratasys, HP, 3D Systems, most of the big boys. And I have never ever hit the print button on a machine. And I just haven't. I don't have a printer. I never have. I can draw. I have CAD on my machine, but I've always had somebody to print for me, and that's kind of cool. So that was just kind of fun. Here's a close up of that picture, that model that was on the left. It's just amazing what you can do with those if you just follow the instructions. So here's my CMRI that Ed and I have done. It's pretty crazy. I can actually either run trains with my iPhone or with my keyboard, or I've written software that will allow the trains to run everything themselves. They can uncouple cars, they can push cars on the sidings, they can pick up cars, it can do everything. It takes 24 minutes to run through a complete schedule, dropping cars off and picking cars up. It's just really freaky. It's a whole nother hobby of its own. I threw this in there real quick just to show, if you look on that barrel right there that has the hole in it, so that's an infrared line that goes across, that the other side of it is in the black. I built those black ties up there, and so the transmitter is in the yellow barrel and the receiver is in the black ties, and it's putting a signal across there. So when the engine walks through it, it breaks the line and it sends a signal back to the computer and says, "Hey, I'm here and I need to do something." That's one way that we can control the cars on, Ed's. He counts cars on his, so just random stuff, just craziness, but it's pretty fun. On the right hand side, those are photo transistors. What photo transistors do is it's like an on-off switch. So if there's light from the room on that transistor, it's in one state. If you run a car on top of it, that would cut off the light, right? And then that would put it into another state. So that's like turning this light switch off, which sends another signal to the computer that says I got to do something else, like I'm getting to the end of a track and I need to slow the engine down. Throttles are all home built. Ed designed and built the throttles, so we can completely control the throttles from 0 volts to 1024 volt, or 0 to 12 volts, but with 1024 steps in between, and can make them go real fast or make them go real slow through that 1024 any way we want. But like I say, that's a whole nother hobby. So that's Pagosa Creek Timber Company, and it's been fun building it. There's still a lot more to do. I plan on expanding the computer into this room further down the line too. There's probably as much computer work to do in here as there is train work, and I'll do both. And that's about where we are. If you're ever in, there's my website that I have. I haven't worked on it very much, but it is there, and I plan on doing more work on it as we go. If you're ever in Houston, I'd love to have you come by. I was on the 2015 narrow gauge convention tour, and I enjoyed doing that. I'm usually on the November tour for the San Jacinto Model Railroad Club tour every year. and I'm always open to have people come. So if you're in Houston and you don't come by, I'll be mad. So
Thanks, Paul.
yep.
We appreciate it. Robin, you want to check on any questions in the chat?
Sure will. So yeah, there are quite a few here. So thank you, Paul. One of the questions was an interesting one. What was the scale of the refinery models that you were creating at the very beginning?
3/8 inch equals a foot.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out what scale that is, but I can't in my head, so close enough. Daryl Jacobs says, wow, beautiful layout. I agree with him. Going down, Rainer at Beretti.com says, how do you make those wonderful trees?
Yeah. So those trees are made with they're made with air conditioner filters. I don't,
Okay.
it's really, you know, it's the old school filters, right? Before, not what we buy now, but in the olden days, before we had the prefab things, people use stuff, and I don't remember what it's called. I bought enough of it in case it goes out of business. I'll have enough to make forever. It's called
Horsehair.
what?
Hog hair.
Hog hair. That's it. Yeah. And yeah, I was gonna say pig something. Hog hair. That's it. And you can buy it in big. I think I had it in 4x4, 4 foot by 4 foot. And you know, you and it comes in about an inch thick, and you separate that into 3 sections, and then cut it into like I have stars, right? I made some prefab stars, and I just lay a piece of star on it and cut stars, and then just stick those down over his tube. And that's, I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's pretty much how it's done.
Cool. Okay, so there's just one other question, but there's a few really good comments. Chuck Proudfoot said, you were talking about the red rocks up there north of Santa Fe. I used to live in Albuquerque. I know it's beautiful up there around Ghost Ranch and Abiquiu. And Chuck
Right.
was saying, yeah, up around the Ghost Ranch area. It was always a beautiful drive going up there at sunrise in the morning to catch the early train out of Chama. Steve Hollenbach says, hey, drywall can always be patched. Great layout. So I know what he means by that. R. Kerr from Edgewood says, Paul, great layout and models. Thanks for sharing, as does Bill Hobbs and Jim Brown. And Dwayne Richardson, our previous presenter, says, Paul, will you be open for the LSR convention next month?
I have not been asked to do that. So, and I haven't registered for that convention yet, but
Okay.
if they ask me, I probably will.
And Bill Hobbs says, isn't 3/8 known as F scale? Possibly. And Chuck Hakarin says the scale is 32:1, whatever scale that is, which I think is English O scale. I can't remember. Anyway. And Eric Miller at the very end, this question says, can you comment on your rock work techniques?
My rock work is just, you know, it's just like what everybody else, what I think everybody has done is with plaster and with rock molds, right? Like, golly, you know, and I have some coal, right? I get big pieces of coal and make some of my own. I have one right here. Make some of my own molds and you know, just put the plaster up, and then you know, just put the mold on top of the plaster on the using hydrocal. And like what Dwayne said, I buy mine from a Circle Brick. It's a brick supply store, and buy it in 100-pound bags, and you know, it's just, and it's the painting of it is where the tricks come in. And I usually use, you know, squirt bottles and you know, just several different types of acrylic paints that I can buy from Hobby Lobby, and come back with also what Dwayne had said, making the India ink and alcohol, and that's how I get the black on it, and using that on top of the acrylics, and you just go a little bit at a time. And my deal is to paint and wait 2 or 3 days and then add some more and wait 2 or 3 days. I know in the past I would paint the backdrop and then say I'm going to do some more right now, and then I get it too dark and you can't get it lighter, and or you don't get it dark enough, and so you want to get it darker, and then when it dries it's too it's just better to wait 2 or 3 days and look at it, keep looking at it every day, and then come back and do it, or maybe even a week, and then come back and add some more.
Paul, we appreciate you taking the time to show your layout tonight. It's a beautiful layout, and again, I think anybody who's going to Houston should take you up on the visit.